Welcome to your weekly dose of content inspiration. In this video, I'm gonna break down these 3 crazy edits and try my best to explain how I think they were made. Now this week we have a video sent in by a fellow follower and he asked me to break it down, so I'm gonna try to do that to the best of my abilities. If you have videos you want me to try and break down as well, do send me a DM with them. I look at all my DMs, because really it's not that many. I'll try my best if I think it's worth adding into the video. With that being said, in case you're new here, I'm Ryan, content creator, editor, and agency owner, which means I deal with content every single day. And in order to stay inspired, I started this show to learn from the best, to ultimately steal for myself, and therewith for you. With that being said, enough ramble. Today, we're not doing any hooks of the weeks because I didn't find anything new or unique, so I figured, and I'm just not gonna add it. Let's get into video 1. Now, it's one of my favorite creators, Adrian. He's back again, and he's cooking again.
This is the biggest announcement I've ever made. For months, I've been building something behind the scenes. Something that goes beyond tutorials, beyond courses, beyond community. It's called Content College, the next chapter of APCC. The evolution of everything we've built together. The free creative community isn't going anywhere. That's still going to be my platform to learn, connect, and grow. But Content College is for the ones that want to go deeper. New long-form lessons, premium products, free products, live workshops, and every resource I've ever created all in one place. Your new home to learn all things content, built for those ready to take the next step. And just to be clear, nothing here changes. You'll still be getting the free breakdowns, tutorials, creative community. If anything, you'll be getting more of that because now we have separation between the two. Anyways, I can't tell you everything just yet, but just know that it's launching soon, and when it does, I want y'all to be part of the first class. And to kick things off, I'm hosting a free live webinar workshop where I'll walk you through the first look at what to come inside Content College. Just comment APCC and you'll be the first to know.
This guy's so cool, man. I love his shit. Anyway.
This is the biggest announcement.
The hook itself, not difficult. This is the original shot, and you just scale it down from like 150 to 100 within the space of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you manipulate keyframes, in case you're really new to editing, there is a function whereby if you right click on the keyframe and select ease out, and then on the second keyframe, do the same but select ease in, you can manipulate the way that it flows in.
This is the biggest announcement.
Here's something that Adrian also does that is super underrated, and that is the use of different style of fonts. And so if I had to summarize one of the best investments I ever made, it would have been a simple course on typography. Now, why do I say that? That particular course helped me break down and understand and get to know what it is that makes a good font and a great font a great font. And also how different types of fonts play well together. Also how different types of fonts tell you something, portray a different feeling. It's why Comic Sans is always considered a comedic font, whereas something like Dido is considered maybe a font that you would put on a wine bottle, something more luxury or corporate. And what Adrian has done super well in this segment is paired 2 fonts that work well together, because one is more of a flowy kind of font, whereas the other is a hard-hitting, big capital letters. And so when you're trying to pair fonts, doing it this way, whereby there's contrast, that one is handwritten or in lowercase letters and the other is in capitals, is a good way to figure out if things match well together.
I've ever made. For months, I've been building something behind the scenes.
How would you do a shot like this? Honestly, I think it is relatively easy. The difficult part is going to be able to get your phone at this angle. Now, it could be you're lucky and you have some sort of stairs here whereby you can set up a tripod that just looks down. If you don't, you're probably gonna have to somehow stick your phone, camera, whatever it is that you use to the roof. That is quite tricky to do, and I have only seen that being done in a way whereby your camera doesn't die by using your phone and tape. Please be mindful of what you use when you do this. But either way, you need your camera in a fixed position, in this case looking down, and then you film yourself at different times of the day. So in this case, I don't think they're color graded. I think they are, this one is, for example, probably shot more midday. This one seems like it's shot more at night. This is early morning. I'm guessing this is some somewhere in the beginning of the afternoon, and that's going to cause this different light feels. So when you then layer the elements on top of each other and kind of crop them out, you create this different feel. Alternative could be that you desaturated one or two of these to get a little bit more of a different look, but that's how I would go about at least recreating this shot. Now, what I also noticed is that Adrian's purposely kind of misaligned them here to sell the effect. So sometimes it's not about matching things up perfectly either.
Something that goes beyond tutorials, beyond
It's as simple as a time lapse.
tutorials, beyond courses.
Nothing crazy to it, just a time lapse. You could film that with your phone, especially if you have newer grade phones. If you can film in log, that's awesome. But there's no science to this.
Tutorials, beyond courses, beyond community. It's called Content College, the next chapter of APCC. The evolution.
What also can be underestimated is the use of music in this segment, and ultimately the switch in music once the, let's say, big reveal happens. And so we go from kind of building up
Community. It's called Content College.
a riser, and then ultimately as the big reveal happens, we start getting more upbeat. In case you don't have a musical background, there are segments to all songs, which for electronic purposes call them the drop and the build up and a break. If you are more of like singing, you call these things the verse and the chorus, but I feel like more people will understand what I mean when a drop is considered. Either way, all music is built up the same way, and so in this case, the moment the big reveal happens, that is when your drop comes in, and the moment before is when you've used the break or maybe the build up as a means to build momentum towards something. And so when you then bring back down the pace, you're probably going to go to the break after the first drop. And so if you have that basic understanding of music, you're able to much easier use music to your advantage in order to add pacing to the video throughout.
The next chapter of APCC. The evolution of everything we've built together. The free creative community is...
So this is a collection of clips that he's obviously filmed in the past. Make the clip 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So let's say on average 3 frames long in all cases. Slap on the transform effect. You put a keyframe on scale, and then to the end of the clip, put the keyframe to, let's say, 130, maybe a bit more, 150 even. And then put the shutter angle on this to about 120, and then just repeat this. And because you have a consistent zoom that way, this is what makes it feel really appealing. And putting up the shutter angle will give it this blur feeling to it, without you needing to add in manual directional blur, for example.
Free creative community isn't going anywhere.
This is just a fantastic match cut, and so when you shoot a lot of the similar looking clips, you should be able to recreate something like this. In order to do this effect really well, and it works better when you have the same person, because if you do this with different people, the eyes are wider apart. When you have the same person, this is perfect. And basically what you do is you take guides within Premiere Pro and you outline the eyes and draw an extra one in the middle. And then you just have to line up all of these images through means of rotation and keyframing to line up perfectly with those eyes. And so you'll see that some of these pictures are slightly rotated because otherwise the eyes don't line up. And so when you do that, then you can create this effect. And you will have to scale some of them accordingly, and others will be too big. This is a match cut.
That's still going to be my platform to learn, connect, and grow. But Content College is for the ones that want to go deeper. New long-form lessons, premium products, free products, live workshops, and every resource I've ever created all in one place. Your new home to learn all things content, built for those ready to take the next step. And just to be clear,
how do you create this sick shot?
nothing here changes. You'll still...
Or how would I at least go about creating this shot? I feel like this is 2 layers. And so first part is a screenshot of his top of his Instagram page. You could definitely recreate this in Canva. You might also take a screenshot of your Instagram page. And then this part here is a second layer. You go to your Instagram page and you go as far as you think you need in order to scroll. Make sure to do that in advance, because otherwise when you're trying to create the roll, it's not gonna load. And then you make a recording of swiping down your Instagram feed. Now that could be one way. You could also go about taking a bunch of screenshots of your feed on a desktop and then layering all of these underneath each other in a tool like Photoshop or Canva, and then you automate it through means of keyframes and speed ramping in post in Premiere. That is how you get the basic layer. Then you have to obviously rotoscope yourself out to put yourself on the top layer so that it's hidden behind him. And then finally, the layer itself either needs to be put the screen blending mode, or you could slightly turn down the opacity to about like 80%. And then he finally has a bit of a glow around it, or a bit of a blur. So it could be that he just has added the glow effect on top.
You'll be getting the free breakdowns, tutorials, creative community. If anything, you'll be getting more of that because now we have separation between the two. Anyways, I can't tell you everything just yet, but just know that it's launching soon, and I want y'all to be part of the first class. And to kick things off, I'm hosting a free live webinar workshop where I'll walk you through the first look at what to come inside Content Color.
This was also sick and also not too hard to do, to be honest. What you need is a background. That background is obviously the paper here. You need to make sure that when you render that one out, that you render it out at 4K. So when you're editing in 1080, and in this case you zoom into the paper, that it doesn't get super pixelated. It still has quite detailed. And then you need to basically put keyframe from zoomed in to zoomed out and match the rotation so that it goes back to normal. And then finally you need to ease out and ease in the keyframes in order for it to smoothly rather than scale back the same way. And then you just have a bunch of screenshots that appear. You can just do a pop-in effect like this one, for example. Very simple, by changing the scale from 0 to like 110, and then have really quickly go from 110 back down to like 100 or 90. And that's what creates the pop effect. If you want to create it a little bit more so that it feels like it's popping, the secret is that instead of scaling it from 0 to 100, scale it from 0 to 110, and then very quickly have it come back down to 100. And the like slight increase to then come back down size is what makes it feel like it's slightly more dynamic.
Inside Content College. Just comment APCC and you'll be the first to know.
Anyway, that was sick. Adrian's one of my favorite creators, man. Moving on, and this is the video that was sent in by Kareem, if I'm not mistaken. I'll say in advance, this is more of a filming thing than it was an editing thing. I am an editor. I do have some experience in filming, but it's minimal. But I'm gonna try my best anyway. Let's go. First of all, the grade on this fucking slaps. This is so sick. But that being said, there is not a crazy amount of difficulty that goes editing-wise into creating something like this. It's actually quite consistent use of the same effects, and that is match cutting motion, great use of sound effects, and understanding where to drive your focus. For example, what they do well here, they basically match cut the movement of the people here and then line up the exact same amount of people in the new shot, and they also match the same movement. For example, this here. When they open the lids, they match it to the moment that the person here opens her eyes fully as well. And so again, it's just match cutting the motion and understanding how to create that symbolism, if you will. Continue there with closing the eyes again and the lids of the pans being slammed on top. And this goes out on throughout. They're matching the motion again, ultimately to reveal the car at the end. Understanding the way that it works is not difficult. Making the shot is something that requires a lot of planning in advance. So if you want to film something like this, definitely recommend creating a storyboard, especially a visual one, because that way you can kind of draw out what you want the designs to look like. Now there's a couple of tools that will actually create storyboards for you, in which you can put in a prompt and it kind of spits out like a sketch version of the storyboard. If you are good at drawing, because I'm not, you could also try and draw it yourself. You could even try use stick characters to draw out, but I'd recommend doing that before you go out and film these kind of shots, because otherwise you're going to run into a lot of trouble and you're not going to know what the edit looks like in your head, so you will ultimately forget to make shots like this. So that's something to keep in mind. In addition, adding in crazy sounds like this, the noise there, this, the vroom, that's not sounds that will have been recorded on location, or at least I don't think so. I think that will have been added in manually, and you would look for something like a sword unsheathing or a sword swing, something like that you can add in. Same as here, this will be some sort of gear that resembles the motion. Although it could be, I'm doubtful that they recorded these sound effects on location. Especially because in order to use good sound effects or create good sound effects, you need a lot of factors to work in your favor, such as having a lot of silence. Otherwise, you're gonna have a lot of noise to the effect, which isn't always a bad thing, but a lot of the time, the less noise you have, the crisper your sound effect will be. All right, other than that, I think it's actually quite simple, man. I mean, it's a great grade, music, and then it's just consistent use of this effect over and over again. But besides that, there is not much difficulty to it. But as said, make sure to use that storyboard in order to get the effect that you're looking for. Okay, and that has already led us to the last video of today. 12-second video, but jam-packed with sick effects. So I figured, let's break it down. Let's go, baby. How people come up with this stuff is just crazy. I love it. Definitely caught my eye was this first hook. This was so sick. So how would I go about creating something like this? He's probably done at least the disappearance with AI, given by how it's kind of warped here. But the first part, obviously you need to reach to your computer screen. He has, I would say, like a yellow glow on his computer. This could be like an ellipse that you make with a really strong feather on it and maybe a glow to it, and then put the opacity to like 20%. And that's gonna create this like halation that comes from the laptop. And then the hand reaching out. I don't think this is his hand, because you see as his hand comes out that it kind of morphs. Fingers aren't as clear. I think you could do a version as well whereby you record your hand on a plain background, mask it out, and then have that mask as an alpha layer. That's going to make your entire hand white in the same way. Texturize that with a glow effect, and then it's just about putting a crop on that, making the hand appear in the same way. Also, you'll need to rotoscope the hand, obviously, to get it, be able to manipulate it. It could also be, just judging by the way the hand kind of morphs, that this is an AI layer of a hand. Then what he does to sell the effect is invert the colors. This you can do, there's literally a setting in Premiere called invert. You just take that effect and drag it on top. And then one frame off, one frame off, one frame off, and then we start with the morph. I think this segment here, he will have been standing behind the camera and thrown a bunch of papers into the room so that they fall into the room like this, because this looks like it was done a little too legit. Creating this shot, I've been seeing it everywhere. It's actually not as hard as you might think. And so you need 2 boxes, in essence, put your back on. Then when you're lying on those boxes, make sure that the front of those boxes are covered in green paper. Make sure you are well lit, this is important, and that your full body is visible. And then you're going to, on the boxes, kind of do this falling motion. You're going to rotoscope yourself out using a tool like Runway or After Effects rotoscope tool, or these days, even in Premiere, Premiere. It's pretty good, I can recommend. Make sure to ultra key the boxes out, obviously. And now you just need a sick background, in this case one that resembles the light, and you keyframe yourself falling down. This is obviously a more closer version of this. He will have shot himself at different angles, obviously. Here's another one. Then a scary ass hand reaching up again. Something that I've touched on before is, in order to sell the consistency of a video, it's good to bring back certain effects that you've used multiple times. And we see that happening in the next frame, which is where he's again inverted the colors of a crazy shot. And that is just a shot of his eye, masked out, and then repeated multiple times. Just having a really strong feather in order to be able to do this. That's all it is. And then these are just replicas of that, the same layer being added back in. And that's all that is. I say all, it's of course a super sick video, but sometimes the things that are sick are actually easier to do than you might think. If you end up trying it, do tag me. I'm curious to see if anybody that watches this actually tries to put this stuff into practice. And with that being said, we've reached the end of this episode. If you enjoyed yourself at all throughout this episode, consider smashing the subscribe button. My goal is to try and bring you one of these every week. And so it helps when the subscriber count grows, because it allows me to actually earn money from it, because right now I don't earn jack shit from it. That's okay. We don't do this for the money. We do this for the love of the job, but it certainly would be nice to earn money. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Adios.